All right, so welcome everyone. If you're new, please just do a reach out on chat or raise your hand to let us know you're new. But thanks again. If you weren't here earlier, I kind of told the story of how I've been trying to do reInvent recaps. This is the third year in a row. Struck out the first year, although we had beer and wine, fortunately, to smooth things over. Last year had some technical challenges. Trevor Roberts Jr., who's our speaker tonight, if you were there, he was the one who walked in with baby strapped to his chest, and I twisted his arm, and he manned up and actually did that. The good news is he actually had advance notice. He volunteered for this. So I want to thank Trevor for doing that. He's one of the local solution architects with Amazon. And I'm going to turn this over now to our sponsors, IO Associates. And again, if you're in between jobs or want to feel out the market, those are the guys to talk to. So Sam, Matt, and Elliot, it's all yours.
Who wants to go?
You go today, Samuel. You got your special glasses on for the big day.
I'm always the one that goes. Hi guys.
You've got a coffee, so I think you should go.
Yeah, fair. We're here to ruin your day. Now we're here to try and hopefully add some value in some regard in the way that we do. We're cloud recruitment professionals based in Tampa. We've been partnered with Jeff now for probably too long, coming up 6 months almost now, I think.
Sam, it's that Tampa accent of yours that gave it away.
Yeah, thank you for that. Let me finish. You're always butting in. Yeah, so trying to build some good relationships, some local people, and we partnered with Jeff, 5-6 months ago. He's built an incredible thing with you guys in this event, and we're just trying to help out in any way possible by bringing new speakers to the floor, and that's also a thought. If anyone wants to speak or anyone has any ideas on future speakers, we're really eager to listen to those kind of ideas, or you'd like to hear from a certain topic, anything like that, just reach out to us afterwards. And at the end of the day, we're recruiters, so we'd like to help people if you're looking about anything, no matter what it is, whether it's architecture, software engineering, data analytics, just class DevOps, cloud, or you're just learning it and you're a junior heading in. This, we've got loads of amazing opportunities with some really cool local people at the moment. So I'm sure we could help you out, if not now, in the very near future. I won't babble on too much, but last thing is I'm going to send you all a invite via meetup.com to a Slack group that I've created, and I've twisted my director's arm to pay for. So basically, it'll hopefully, I'm aiming for it to ideally take over Meetup in the future. The platform meetup.com is brilliant, and it's introduced this idea of maybe communicating a little bit more fluidly and a little bit more personally, and share some ideas and hopefully share some roles, and just a little bit more regular contact from us in the interim instead of waiting for these kind of events. So I'll share the workspace. You can all join. I'm sure you're all familiar with Slack, and we can get cracking and hopefully continue the conversation further. We thought it was a good idea anyway. So see if you guys like it. Without further ado, I'll hand it over to Trevor. Thanks for listening.
All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight. Let me go ahead and try to share my screen. Let's see. Okay, so my PowerPoint presentation should be coming up momentarily.
I can see it.
Okay, well, hello, everyone, and welcome again to our first well-planned recap for reInvent. Thank you, Jeff, for having me, and the folks at IO Associates for helping to sponsor the event. And my name is Trevor. I'm a local solutions architect here working for AWS. And I've worked with a bunch of customers in the Florida area, and recently my interest in gaming technology caught my attention. So I decided to become a game tech SA. So I don't work with local customers anymore, but I work with gaming studios and pretty much any video game you can think of that may be using AWS. Most likely someone from my team or myself has worked with them. So really excited to be in that space. That being said, I'm still here, still local, so looking forward to being more active in the meetup as the year goes on. Okay, so I'm just gonna go through a bunch of categories of announcements. Feel free to stop me and ask questions. If I have the answers, I will give them to you on the spot. Otherwise, we can maybe have a follow-up or something just to make sure you get the details you're looking for. But first, let's talk about what we have announced in the area of compute. And sorry, let me set a disclaimer. There is no way on this earth that we could go through all the announcements in the amount of time we have for this meetup. So this will be the abridged version. I always point folks to please check out the reInvent site. The content will be up pretty much till the end of January in a couple days. And then from there, we'll start curating it and preparing it for permanent hosting on YouTube. So you still have a couple more days to check out the content. And again, anything that I don't cover here, I can guarantee you there's probably an exponential number more of presentations that you can look for announcements and get what you're looking for. So on to compute. One of the things that we want to do as a company, AWS, we want to keep on innovating on behalf of our customers. So even though EC2 has been out for such a long time, you don't see us rest on our laurels. We're just trying to keep on innovate with and keep up with the trends that customers have been asking for. So some of the things that we have launched include these P4D instances. If you're not familiar with our nomenclature on our instance types, the P types and the G types include NVIDIA GPUs of various models, and they're really there for graphics intensive workloads and or machine learning. So getting you that powerful parallel processing and the networking capacity to go along with it. And you see that P4D instance has 400 gigabits per second of network throughput available within the AWS network. And so we continue to also give choices. So instead of just relying on the NVIDIA chips for our inferences and for our training, we're starting to branch out into offering custom silicon so that you can have maybe different price performance targets with how you choose to invest in your EC2 instances. You don't have to always use the most expensive processors, but you can also, for inference workloads, we have that Inferentia chip, that INF1 instance type that you can take advantage of. And as customers begin to move more enterprise-grade workloads to the cloud, we want customers to feel secure that they can run their top-tier applications with an efficient way, with good performance on our platform. So you see there that we have one of the largest instance types for SAP workloads, and that's at 24 terabytes of memory available. And one thing that customers have also given us feedback about, they love Intel, but they also like choice. And that's when you'll see us introducing different types of processors as well for the CPU aspect, including AMD processors and ARM processors as well. Now, what allows us to have this flexibility? Well, we've made some investments into the platform. And if you're not familiar with our Nitro system, that is our custom hardware that we've put together. And also we're leveraging a new hypervisor. Well, it's not really new. It's kind of our spin on KVM. And with the way that we have structured our servers, there's a separate card for the core components of the hypervisor, meaning that essentially all the RAM and the CPU, or for lack of a better intent, just the entire allocation of your CPU and RAM is available to the cloud instances that are running on the hardware. So that traditional, I have to reserve a certain amount of capacity to be able to run the hypervisor bits, that goes away with our newer Nitro system instances. And that chip that you see on the right-hand side, that's Graviton 2, that is the name that we have given to our ARM processors. And our customers are starting to get really excited about the cost savings that they can get with ARM. So I'll go over to the next slide. We're seeing customers achieving 40% better price performance ratio when it comes to their workloads. That means that they're able to choose an instance type with less resources allocated to it and still get the same performance from a more powerful instance type. And what does that allow us to do? It gives us more flexibility with what kinds of instances we can provide. And because less power is required for these chip types, we're able to spend less money on cooling, less money on power, and we pass on those savings onto you, the customer. And just like we have for every other instance type, we have a variation based on, do you want to be memory optimized? Meaning you have a larger allocation of memory to CPU ratio versus general purpose, or compute optimized, meaning I have a higher number of vCPUs to amount of memory ratio. And so we introduced those R6G, those 6G instance types earlier this year. And one thing that we announced at reInvent was the 6gn instance type. And that's where you have those ARM processors being able to take advantage of 100 gigabits per second network speed. So really just trying to help customers get the performance they need at maybe a more attractive price point, depending on the workload. Some workloads, but depending on the libraries you're using or the software you're using, it's always going to need to run on the x86 platform until those vendors make a decision. But interesting things that we're seeing in the industry is that Apple is throwing their weight behind ARM. So we expect a lot of software vendors are going to start taking a look at ARM in a more serious way going forward. But it'll be interesting to see how the industry shakes out. Now, some of the things that our customers are telling us about their usage of ARM is they're seeing that based on the workloads they're running, they're seeing a less cost involved with running similar workloads. Well, that seems to be the biggest thing, especially in the times that we're in. Anywhere where we can squeeze a penny and save as much money as we can, customers are all about that. So very interesting to see how the mix of Intel-based workloads to ARM-based workloads ends up happening in the long run. Okay, so I covered the C6gn instance pretty well. I think I've pretty much said all there is to say about that. But if you would like to learn more and maybe dive a little bit deeper into that instance type, this is the code for the talk at the reInvent website. So feel free to go ahead and check out that talk when we're done. And Jeff, I'll make sure that anything that is not company confidential, I will include in a Meetup-friendly PDF to share with all of you for your reference afterwards. So you can go back and take a look at what I've been rambling about.
And Trevor, James Taylor, not the singer, has a question about the video card GPUs. Is ARM an option for them as well?
So for the moment, our GPU instances are still using Intel CPUs. We're still trying to figure out from customers what they want to do with their GPU workloads. Once we get that feedback enough about, am I ready to move to ARM and all of that, then you'll probably see us make some moves as far as also having it available for GPU type workloads. So just keep your eyes and ears open in that space. Of course, if you haven't heard the stat, 90% of our roadmap is dictated by our customers. It's continuously changing, and I'm sure that as we continue to invest in ARM, you're going to see some things for machine learning, GPUs, graphic intensive along the way. The most important thing to remember is that the libraries that are required for GPUs, they need to be compiled for ARM. So that may be something that is an impediment, because we got to kind of wait for the vendors who make these frameworks for them to be ready for ARM. That being said, NVIDIA seems to be interested in purchasing ARM.
Yeah, so NVIDIA is the one that I was thinking of as the GPUs. that you could wire up the NVIDIA cards, which somebody has been building supercomputers in their home lately. And that takes rack space. And I thought a buddy of mine told me that the cloud vendors had that capability to directly leverage those, but I guess he was wrong. I don't know where he came up with that.
I mean, we do have capabilities when we will launch instance types like that have ARM and the GPUs. That is anybody's guess at this point. Again, it's dependent on the feedback that we get from customers as to when they want it and when they're ready for it.
Yeah, it's really good for real-time kind of processing of like PLC applications.
Right. Okay, so I know that I was really happy and excited about ARM, but Intel isn't going anywhere. They're continuing to make their best silicon available to us. So you'll see here this M5 ZN processor type that is one of the faster Intel ZN processors with a higher clock speed. So as customers continue to make investments in the Intel platform, we continue to partner with them. As you can see on the bottom right-hand side, the footer there, Intel is still a strategic partner of AWS. So as they innovate, we continue to innovate along with them. Now, there are some customers who need to have higher capacity storage in the cloud. Now, these are not necessarily going to be the highest speed storage, but let's say you need just large capacity, you need to keep a big amount of data available on the cloud and you're not ready to maybe invest in S3, that's when you may take a look at the D3 instances. So workloads such as Lustre clusters or Gluster and all of those, if you're doing anything with needing high capacity local storage in the cloud, this is where you would look at the D3 instances. Now, the R5b instance type, they're really interesting because they're allowing a significant amount of throughput for EBS. And this kind of goes hand in hand with our IO2 Block Express announcement. I'm not sure if I have a slide for that here, but in case I do not, the IO2 Block Express offers up to 4 times the maximum capacity we used to have on, or that we still have on the IO2 storage type, but it's allowing customers to get speeds that approach the same amount of throughput for storage that they can enjoy with SANs on premises. So again, trying to help our enterprise customers who need that really high speed throughput, they can use an R5b instance type, pair it with the IO2 Block Express storage, and really go to town with high speed storage utilization for those applications that require it. And for our customers who need better graphics workloads or performance, we have the G4ad instances. This is using the AMD GPUs. So again, talking about that flexibility that we have, working with multiple chip vendors, you'll see that here you can take advantage of those epic AMD CPUs and paired with the AMD Radeon GPUs, just getting that performance that folks would want from the AMD platform in the cloud. And I think someone may have unmuted. Did you have a question about either of those instance types? Nope, okay. Now, 2 interesting developments that are happening include AWS Trainium. Now, this is a chip that we are developing ourselves for the training side of machine learning and data science and all of that. We initially went into this space with the Inferentia chip, which is used strictly for inference. So once you have your machine learning model defined, you would host it somewhere, and allow your application to send requests for inferences to that hosting location. Well, with the Inferentia chip, that made it a bit cheaper to do than using the more powerful NVIDIA chips that you would use for training. Now, that is a custom chip we created, Inferentia, and so we're taking a stab at the whole training side of things with the Trainium chip type, and it supports the frameworks that most data scientists and machine learning enthusiasts know and love, including TensorFlow, PyTorch, and MXNet. And also Intel is getting into the training GPU space, and that's what you see there, those Habana accelerators that we're gonna have support for. So keep a lookout for towards the end of 2021, we'll see some more from Trainium and Habana instance types being available for customers to evaluate and see if they like the experience better than or the same as with NVIDIA and Radeon GPU types. Now, this one is last but certainly not least. It's something I've been looking forward to since I joined AWS, is the availability of Mac instances on our platform. So this has been a long time coming. We've had developers say, hey, AWS, we love your platform. We would love to be able to build our iOS apps and pretty much anything that we need to build in Xcode. We would love to do it in the cloud too. And we had to say, yes, that's a great idea. And then keep coming back to the drawing board. Well, we finally were able to announce it this year. And we're really excited to see how customers benefit from it. And something that is also exciting to know about this is we're not done innovating. The Mac instances that we have, they're the Intel versions of the Macs, but we're also looking to support the M1 Macs, if not this year, then early next year. But we're going to continue innovating in this space and to help our various mobile developers, our various Macintosh app developers with their needs, with compiling and having their CI/CD pipeline all in one environment, rather than having most of it in the cloud and then having to come down to a little Mac Mini just to build the files and then transfer it back for testing.
That's huge, because we use Mac Stadium to put the Mini Mac out there for putting it into the Apple Store for the iOS app we put in for Hertz. So now you're saying that entire code pipeline, code build, all your PR, your CI/CD can all be done right there.
All in one shot, all in one place.
Wow.
That was my sentiment exactly. All right, so that's it for the compute section. I'll move on to my favorite topic, containers, next, but I'll stop here. Are there any other questions on any of the compute topics that I covered? All right, I'll keep this train rolling. So let's move on to containers. That's the buzzword du jour, I think, still, between that and Kubernetes. Well, let's see what AWS is doing in the space to help customers be successful with containers, shall we? So our mission when it comes to containers in AWS, we want to make AWS the best place to run and manage containers. Now, what exactly does that mean? We give customers choice. So there's customers out there who like our original way of provisioning and managing containers. That's ECS. So we still continue to make that platform available to customers, and we continue innovating there as well. There's customers who want to run Kubernetes, and so we make a managed offering for that. There's customers who love Red Hat's OpenShift, and that's something that we pre-announced earlier in the year, but we actually launched at reInvent. So now you have 3 different container orchestration systems that you can use, whether it's Kubernetes, ECS, Red Hat OpenShift, depending on your business's needs. So if your business, if you all are all Red Hat OpenShift experts, continue using that on the AWS platform. If you love Kubernetes, you live, breathe, eat Kubernetes all day, all night, then stick with Kubernetes. If you could care less about what your container orchestration platform looks like, you just want to give us a Docker file, a Docker image, and have it run, and you want a simple experience, and you're brand new to container orchestration, feel free to check out ECS. And that third icon on the right, Fargate, if you're not familiar with Fargate, this is a capability of simplifying the container experience even further. With Kubernetes, with ECS, with Red Hat OpenShift, you're still managing the EC2 instances that are running your containers. But with Fargate, we manage those EC2 instances. What you do is you tell us, hey, I have this Docker image. I want to run X number of replicas, and I want it to be able to scale out. And you can provision it to Fargate. We take care of the container hosts that are running your containers. All you have to worry about is saying which containers you want to run. So depending on your operations preference, whether you want to be knee deep into the guts of how my EC2 instances are executing my containers, or you just want to be hands off and say, hey, I want these containers to run and that's all I want to know, you can do that with Fargate. So wanting to accommodate customers regardless of the experience they want to have. Now, we didn't just stop there. We have those offerings, but we also have some new announcements. Customers gave us the feedback that said, hey, I love the container things y'all are doing in the cloud, but I have some latency sensitive workloads that I would like my containers to take care of on premises. So we made two advancements in that area. The first one is EKS Anywhere. So for the folks who are using ECS today, they can use the ECS control plane that is up in the AWS cloud, but have worker nodes be actual servers on premises. So this gives our customers more flexibility. You have a bunch of data that needs to be crunched on premises. You don't want to wait for it to be uploaded to AWS before you begin working on it. Take advantage of ECS Anywhere. Now, what about Kubernetes? Are we leaving them out? No, we're not leaving Kubernetes out. We also have EKS Anywhere announced. Now, this architecture is a little bit different than ECS Anywhere. Instead of using a control plane that is hosted in the cloud, we offer you a distro, that's open source. We're not doing any special AWS magic to it, but there's the EKS distro that you can install on premises. You'll have your Kubernetes API server on premises in addition to your worker nodes as well. Now, EKS Anywhere is going to be a deployment mechanism, a way of initially deploying that EKS distribution on premises so that you have a working Kubernetes cluster, and also taking care of upgrading and the various management duties for the control plane. So I alluded to it a little bit before, EKS Distro. This is a Kubernetes distribution, again, fully upstream Kubernetes, but we give it a name just because it's the distribution that we use ourselves on the AWS cloud when we created EKS. So the benefits you'll be getting with using this distribution include taking advantage of all the knowledge we have developed with provisioning EKS or provisioning Kubernetes, making sure it's working properly, making sure it's highly available. All of this intelligence we are passing on to you with the EKS distro. Now, for those of you who are in the containers world already, you may have heard that Docker Hub is starting to rate limit folks. If you have an anonymous login, if you're just doing from Nginx, in your Docker file, and you go ahead and create your container image, you're going to start to get rate limited if you're doing a little bit too much of that, or if you're pulling down images to put into your cluster. So one of the things we wanted to do to support the community is make a public endpoint for our own container registry. And the rates that you're allowed to download different instances and different images, I should say, are pretty generous. I don't have the stats on me with how many downloads you can do for free versus how many you need an AWS account for, but they are pretty generous, and feel free to check out our public web pages to see what are the terms there. But it's a way of helping the community deal with Docker Hub needing to start doing some rate limiting. And I understand, because any container class, any tutorial that you see online, people are usually using a public image from Docker, and I can't even imagine what their network throughput must be like, what their download bill must be like from their various ISPs for wherever they host their workloads. But as they make that business move, we want to make sure the community is supported and has a secure way to get publicly available images. So feel free to check that out. And last but not least, I already spilled the beans on this one, but we're supporting Red Hat OpenShift on AWS as a managed service in partnership with Red Hat. So you may have seen that we have reference architectures on how to deploy OpenShift on AWS. This is an actual managed service that we developed in conjunction with Red Hat that you can take advantage of. And that's it for the container announcements. Any questions on the containers pieces? Okay, I'll keep going. And by the way, I know I'm talking a lot. I'm originally from New York, and I do my best not to talk as quickly. But if I start to accelerate, just Jeff, throw something at me so that I slow down. But feel free to stop me and just ask me to go over anything that I may have glossed over. Okay, so for all of you serverless aficionados, we have announcements for you too. So this whole realm of serverless computing, we kind of pioneered it. So we want to make sure that we stay ahead of what customers are asking for. And one of the big things I'm really excited about is the support for AWS Lambda to accept Docker images as a definition for a Lambda function. So think about it. If you're working with containers, before, if you want to get into serverless, you had to kind of figure out what is my CI/CD pipeline going to look like for serverless versus containers. Now it's just a matter of, in your CI/CD pipeline, make sure you include the bits that are needed to successfully run in Lambda. So this is really exciting. You're able to submit a container image up to 10 gigabytes of size. For a Docker image, that is huge. I've only seen multi-gigabyte images for Windows containers, and I'll throw out a disclaimer here. Windows images are not supported with Lambda, but if that's something you need, please give that feedback to your sales rep at AWS so they can open a PFR. But I really haven't seen images that large. If anything, it may be due to including a machine learning model within the Docker container image build. But that is a pretty generous size compared to the size that you're allowed for standard Lambda functions, that packaging. So now you have the option. You can do the whole submitting the source code raw to Lambda, or you can do the submission of a container image to Lambda. It's going to be hosted in ECR, and when a Lambda function is triggered, it will pull it down and start the process of running it just like it's a regular Lambda, because it is a regular Lambda. So that's really cool.
Yeah, my understanding currently is before that, we just submit source code. It has to be under a certain size, otherwise you break it apart, right? And to layer it. But now you're saying we've got all this more size, we can directly set up a Docker image like we would an environment and attach that to a Lambda. Wow, that's
right.
Gonna really be simple.
Yeah, and the emphasis is on simplicity. So we have a lot of people who are in the containers world already, and they want to take advantage of serverless. Now they have a way easier on-ramp than trying to figure out their pipeline just for serverless.
Yeah, the container before was sort of hidden to you, right? It was a black box. It was there, but you couldn't really access it per se directly, right?
Oh, you mean for Lambda?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we call our technology, our native technology for Lambda containers in general. They're not necessarily Docker images, but yeah, you can think of them as container-like. But yes, this is going to allow you to take your Docker images, put that into Lambda. you're still not able to do like a Docker PS or anything to see what's going on in the background on Lambda. But the real benefit here is we're giving you more flexibility on the packaging of it.
I see. Is there more cost associated, obviously?
No, there's no additional cost with it.
Oh, wow.
The only additional cost may be from the ECR storage. I haven't checked the rates on that for the larger sized Lambda images that you'll be using. But as far as the charge for Lambda itself, no additional costs, just the whole how long it runs and how many resources you allocate to it. That's about it.
Right. So currently the storage is what, S3 for your zip file. And now it's going to be, like you said, ECR for the Docker image. Yeah, okay.
Yes.
That makes sense.
Correct. Okay, so speaking of costs, that was a great segue into the next slide. We've moved down to 1 millisecond billing granularity. And for those of you who are looking at Lambda maybe for the first or the second time, this may not be such a big deal for you, but for Lambda customers who've been in it for the long haul, this is a really big reason to jump up and celebrate. Previously, the granularity of billing was at the 100 millisecond level. So let's say that you have a warm Lambda, it's running over and over again, and at the most it's running maybe 20, 30 milliseconds. That means you're paying for an extra 70, 80 milliseconds of execution time that you didn't really need. Well, going back to the drawing board and how we're billing our services, we're able to get down to that granularity on a per millisecond basis for the costing of our Lambda executions, which is a huge difference and be a big savings depending on how active your Lambda functions are. Now, going along with container image support and the per millisecond billing, we also have support for larger functions. So as customers get to be a bit more imaginative with their use cases for Lambda, that's when you see them start to use like up to 10 gigabytes of memory, up to 6 vCPUs, allowing for some parallel processing and things like that. It'll be interesting to see the use cases that come out of these bigger allocations, as well as some access to some instruction sets like the AVX2 instruction set on the CPU with those bigger large function sizes. Now, something that is of interest to our customers is the ability to use Lambda for streams. So just some more flexibility with processing Amazon Kinesis and DynamoDB streams with Lambda there. And yeah, not too much going there, but there's some additional functionality there that customers have been asking for. So the ability to incorporate Lambda with some analytics workloads, that's why we released this feature. Now, AWS Proton, I don't know how many of you have heard of it, but this is a technology that we announced, and we wanted to simplify the process of deploying applications into production. And so instead of customers having to worry about, okay, what does my CI/CD pipeline look like? What container cluster am I going to run? The benefit of this is to kind of give a Heroku / Elastic Beanstalk experience, but specific to modern application deployments, whether it be containers or whether it be using some kind of serverless workload. What you do is you provide the code, AWS Proton will then take the code, provision all of the infrastructure that needs to run that code, as well as the pipelines that are needed to compile and then test and then put the code into production. So it's really meant to be a really easy one-stop shop for taking your code, your modern application development code, and putting it into production. Okay, so that was a lot for serverless. Any questions on that before I move on to hybrid?
One little question back on Lambda, and that is, are there any changes on the time constraints? There've been a few times where the 15-minute thing actually got me.
So 15 minutes was like, that was like a miracle to us when it first announced, because it started off with 5 minutes being the cutoff time and they extended it to 15 minutes. I'm interested, when you say you need more than 15 minutes, do you have like a big function that's doing a whole bunch of stuff? Like, how are you running into that to that brick wall?
Well, by having people submit stuff that doesn't belong in Lambda to begin with, but but you know, most of the time they get by with 5 or 10 minutes, and occasionally they have failures, and you know, it's as simple as that. Their stuff takes too long. It's just a question. I mean, if it's not changed, it's not changed.
Yeah, the 15 minutes hasn't changed. The thing that we try to caution folks is, though, even though 15 minutes is available, be careful about that, because the longer your Lambda function runs, obviously the more we're going to charge you. And it's really cool. AWS is the first company I've been at where we actually try to save people money. So I would try to work with your application developers as well as the users to maybe change up the approach. Maybe your development team could benefit from using step functions, where you break up some of the functionality into different Lambda functions, orchestrated, and that way some components that need to run longer, you can put it on a container, or you can put it on some kind of worker that works asynchronously, resumes by sending back the results, and the rest of the workflow continues with other Lambdas.
Right.
Glue, you can use Glue too.
I'm sorry, what was that one?
Glue.
Yeah, depending on the kind of processing that you want to do, yeah, Glue could be an option as well.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, so let's talk about hybrid computing. Now, again, our customers, as I alluded to earlier, they've told us, yeah, your cloud services are great, but I have this mountain of data that I don't want to keep sending back and forth over my direct connect just to be able to make sense out of it. And so our first foray into addressing that was Outposts, where we have AWS designed servers that can sit on premises side by side with your data or your workloads that require really low latency in order to be effective. And something that we also announced was Local Zones last year. And that is just amounts of compute that could be considered similar to an availability zone with a bunch of servers in it that's tied back to an AWS region. So the first one was Los Angeles, and that was tied back to the Oregon region. So you have customers who have a lot of workloads in the Los Angeles area. They don't want to spend a lot of time sending data back and forth between Oregon or the Northern California region. And so they can take advantage of a local zone and run workloads very close to where they are geographically speaking. And then finally, there's Wavelength, and that's for those mobile providers like Verizon that want to be able to run their applications within their data centers so that it can immediately go over their wireless network to their customers. So there's AWS compute capacity available at select Verizon locations. And so we'll talk a little bit about what we have announced with these various offerings. So with Outposts, we heard the feedback from customers. They don't necessarily have an entire rack of storage available to have our server footprint. So what we have done is we have come up with two form factors, a 1U form factor for Graviton 2 processor based servers, and a 2U form factor for Outpost servers that have an Intel processor. So they are designed in such a way that you don't need our special racks in order to have them running in your data center. You can put them in your racks because they're using standard dimensions. And then you can also maybe have a smaller footprint if you don't need an entire rack of servers at like a remote office or a branch office. That's something you can take advantage of with this smaller Outpost footprint.
I've never heard of this. So you're saying that you can have locally on-prem a small version of the AWS cloud to where you can speak to all the AWS services there within that on-prem data center that's connected
That
to
is correct.
the bigger AWS cloud?
Yeah, so
Wow.
It's not going to be all services. To start, we're supporting EC2, ECS, and EKS. In our larger form factor, we're supporting EBS, and there are going to be more services that we support locally in Outposts. But essentially, we have customers who have data that needs to be actioned on like right away. They can't wait for the even the speed of direct connect to get their data up. I'll give you an example. One of my customers, their name is Zoox. You may have heard of the self-driving car company. They kind of got acquired by Amazon, but before they got acquired by Amazon, they told us, yeah, this direct connect stuff is great. You guys have Snowball and all this stuff, but I have terabytes of data that I need to process every day. I don't have time to wait for the data transfer. So those kinds of use cases, we really want to help customers and meet them where they're at. And so that's why Outposts was launched.
So that's really interesting. You lease to them the hardware, if you will, that and the software, whatever is running on there as a black box. They put it in their data center, and yet it connects back up to the bigger Amazon account and is also part of the billing cycle as well, of whatever that means.
Yes. So the way it works is there's a network component that allows it to connect to the local network. And then you also have to give it at least a gigabit pipe back up to the AWS cloud so that we can get the API traffic going back and forth and transfer AMIs down from the cloud and things like that. But yeah, a really interesting use case really opens up the door to all kinds of workloads that were not previously.
Wow, the government's going to like that. That's, sheesh, the military, yeah.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how many government agencies allow that versus continuing to go down the Snowball edge route, because some of them like to be air gapped, but we'll see how that goes.
Right, I get you. You're not really moving your data up there, you're just moving the containers themselves down, really, and those would be places like the FBI that has a lot of massive video from security cameras that they got to process for forensic cases. Yeah, I could see that.
Okay, and so moving on to local zones. Our first local zone was Los Angeles, as I mentioned before, but we have a few more in preview. So Boston, Houston, and Miami. Again, trying to meet larger customers closer to where they're at. And each of these local zones will be tied back into a different parent region so that you'll be running your APIs against them just like you would any other cloud resource, but then they would be provisioned down, your workloads will be provisioned down to those local zones. And we're going to take a look at 12 more geo areas, including Atlanta, Chicago, New York, and those are just 3 out of 12. So we have 9 more cities that we're still evaluating, but really excited to see how we can help customers achieve better latency numbers and bring the workloads closer to them for the workloads that require it.
What about RDS? That's not on your list.
Yeah, so we're gonna take baby steps as to which managed services that we offer. The biggest ones that we've been getting feedback and requests for are the ones on the list, the container-based services, EC2, EBS, but I wouldn't be surprised if that list continues to grow. Again, continue giving that feedback back to AWS. We're always looking for what customers want.
So I misunderstood one thing. Maybe I understood. So are you saying these are going to be acting like availability zones in one of the other regions?
Yeah, so the way the local zones work is that they're a large allocation of compute. It's not the same size as a region, like you don't have multiple availability zones within a local zone. So it depends on the control plane of a parent region. So in Los Angeles, the parent region is Oregon. Now for the others that were in preview, I'm guessing that Boston is tied to either Ohio or Virginia. Houston, who knows what that is, and Miami, most likely Virginia as well. But yes, they are tied back into a parent region. You make your API calls against that parent region, and you indicate that you want the action executed against a local zone.
And not to sound greedy, but what about transfer costs? Are they considered in region?
I actually haven't looked at the transfer costs. That's something that I probably should take a look at. Let me see. Transfer costs, local zones.
I mean, everyone here is in Florida. So if we got the availability of a mix of Miami and Virginia, it would be, at least for us, would be useful.
Yeah, I'll see what the transfer out, if there's any difference with the local zones compared to the standard region transfer out costs.
Okay.
Where do you see the application of this? Is it more like remote desktop services, Citrix kind of use of EC2s for local infrastructure of an organization?
Well, I can give you our example that I know would have an effect, which is why I asked about RDS. We have an old app that's chatty, so the latency actually matters a lot.
Okay.
Yeah, it all comes down to the latency of your application. How permissive is the latency? Can it deal with direct connect? Direct connect's pretty good, but for some workloads, they need better latency than what even direct connect can offer.
I got it. Okay.
Okay, and moving on to wavelength zones. So again, this is in partnership with various wireless providers. There's KDDI in Tokyo. There's SKT over in South Korea. And we started with Verizon. I forget what the original Verizon wavelength was, but we're opening one in Las Vegas and working with them on that. So in addition to whatever the first wavelength was. So again, this is for Verizon to be able to offer their applications to their mobile users and achieve better performance if it's closer in proximity to their wireless environment, so closer to their packet network, and they can transmit the applications and have the applications interact with the AWS cloud closer to their locations.
How do you actually physically pull that off? Or you guys have a pipe through cable fiber into them, or do you have site to site through microwave, or how's that being physically pulled off?
So there's actual AWS hardware on site at the wireless locations, and then we just have a high-speed link between them back to the parent regions.
Gotcha.
For
yeah,
them.
Fiber. Okay, gotcha. When you say high-speed link, it's not through the air, it's through cable, right? Through
it's through cable.
Trunk or yeah, okay, got it.
Okay, so coming up on databases, let's see what we have here. Just a few announcements, and it starts with Amazon Aurora Serverless version 2. So this is something that customers have been taking advantage of. They have applications that don't necessarily need a database to be running 24/7. And that's typically the sweet spot of the application type you want to run. If you're going to have a database that's running all of the time, don't go with serverless. It's kind of like with Lambda. If you have a web application that needs to be running 24/7, don't use Lambda, use an EC2 instance or a container. But if it's something that is event-based or event-driven, that's when you really get the benefits out of Lambda and also out of Aurora Serverless, where it's used for the amount of time it's needed, then it decreases capacity down to 0 if you prefer over time. So we have improved the performance with the serverless products, so hence the V2 moniker. And so the ability to scale out and scale in is even quicker than before. And also offering a bunch of advanced functionality, including parallel queries, read replicas, multi-AZ support. It was a very simple first offering. It was a little bit limited in functionality, but with this version 2, we've increased the amount of capabilities that are available on the platform. Now, something that I thought was really interesting when I heard that it was announced was this Babelfish open source project. So we have customers who are migrating off of Oracle, migrating off of SQL Server to Aurora, Postgres, or MySQL. And some of them have indicated, hey, we really like the experience with moving off, but we have some really heavy stored procedure type workloads, and they don't necessarily translate as easily, and we have to sometimes rewrite some of our stored procedures. And so with this open source project Babelfish, it's a way of allowing you to run transact SQL statements and transact SQL code on Postgres. And this is available both on Aurora Postgres as well as RDS Postgres or any Postgres. So this is an open source project. Anyone can take advantage of it, but the goal is to help customers who want to accelerate moving off of SQL Server. If they're tired of those licensing fees, they can use this module to kind of move off of the platform at a quicker rate. And that was it for the amount of database advances, except for some of the machine learning stuff. But are there any questions on what I covered for databases?
Babelfish is just a way to create more features in Postgres if you need custom stuff that are going to mimic something in SQL Server?
Right. So the goal is that whatever T-SQL code that you need to run on SQL Server, the Babelfish modules will allow you to do that natively or kind of natively on Postgres. So I think for...
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Do you know any customers that have done this, or is this publicly available? And do you know if any companies have, kind of kicked the tires on this for compatibility testing and such?
So it's in preview, and I will be perfectly transparent with all of you. Anytime we're announcing something, there's been at least one customer who has tried it out. That being said, it's still in preview, so feel free to contact AWS to get access to it, and maybe you can kick the tires and give us some feedback as well.
Okay. And I ask only because I know Green Pages, we have quite a few customers saying, boy, we love the cloud, but writing those checks to Microsoft, that cost hasn't gone away yet. So good information. Thanks.
Yeah.
Really cute concept of using a translator in between. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what was that? Alta Vista back in the day had a Babelfish, or I forget who did, but yeah.
Yeah,
interesting
I think it was
concept. Yeah. Okay, so we're moving into the storage category, and let's see what advancements we have there. So yes, we want to make sure that customers have all the choices they need to get the storage performance they need for the cost point that is attractive to them, and also want to improve how easy it is to manage our storage and also integrate it with our applications. And the first announcement that really knocked my socks off was strong consistency for S3. And this is something that if you've ever taken an AWS certification test before, you are bound to get at least a handful of questions about S3 consistency. And so it was really exciting to see that our reads and our writes are strongly consistent. And for application developers who are relying on S3, you don't really need to modify your applications in order to take advantage of it. The capability is just there and hopefully will make developers' lives easier.
Yeah, what was the current one is like, or at least I remember it being, when I was studying for it, was that you're consistent with reads, right? But it was writes and updates, right? That was the one that it wasn't immediate and it had a little latency or something like that, right?
So for the initial put of an object, that was strongly consistent. But if any updates were made or any changes were made to the object, that data had eventual consistency. So your reads might be off. So yeah.
Yeah, that was it. Now you're saying that now that's changed and now, wow.
Yeah, that was my sentiment exactly when I heard the announcement.
Jeez,
and
that's
it was
huge.
Like little fanfare to it. I was like, my mouth was left wide open when I heard the announcment. I was like, this is a big deal. We should be having a party, but
crap, that's like upgrading to Oracle or something like that from SQL Server.
I'll leave the Oracle and SQL jokes to you all, but yeah, something like that. Okay, so yes, strong consistency. I can't say that enough, but I don't know how ahead of the times the certification exams are. So if you're studying for one right now, just be careful about the wording of the questions because they may not have caught up to this announcement yet. Okay, and so being able to replicate between multiple destinations, multiple regions. Previously, you had cross-region replication, but you could only target one region to send your data to. Now you have the ability to have multiple copies of your data in the same region or to different regions, and it could be multiple regions instead of just one target. So that's pretty cool having that flexibility. And something that is going to be of interest to folks using that SSD storage with your instances, we announced a new type of general purpose volume, the GP3 volume. And so it has a lower price point per gigabyte than the older GP2 volumes, so some savings right off the bat. But in addition to that, it also has a higher baseline IOPS performance level. And so some of the interesting things you had to do with making sure volumes were a certain size to get the performance that you wanted. Some of that starts going away because we allow you to provision throughput and IOPS separately from the capacity. So that's a welcome change. That was a capability that was only previously available with IO2 volumes, but now with the general purpose volumes, we're having some more flexibility with how we are making it more performance without making it too large than your application needs. And IO2 Block Express, I talked about before, where we're getting to more of a SAN type performance in the cloud. So 4 times higher throughput than the maximum throughput that currently exists for IO2 itself. And this is typically where you're going to be taking advantage of maybe database workloads like Oracle, SAP HANA, SQL Server, SAS Analytics, all of the name brands that you know and love in the enterprise application space. These are the kinds of workloads that we may see folks start using IO2 Block Express with. And we already have customers checking it out. It's available in preview. So if you have a need for this kind of high throughput storage with EBS, please sign up for the preview.
Did you say EBS is kind of like a NAS? And
it is network attached, but it's it's allowing you to use it as block storage. So that whole, the typical complications that come along with iSCSI, all of that is extracted or abstracted, I should say, away from you. You just say, give me this amount of storage, and depending on the instance type I select and the type of volume I select, that will determine what your storage throughput will be. But you can think of it as a fancy network attached block storage.
And you can use it for the backing of your relational database management systems, file storage onto that. For the EC2, you could use it for the backing of your file storage for an attached files that your applications need to run against, rather than going to S3 or something of that nature, right? Or
yeah, well, any use case that you have for block volume. So like in the Windows world, if you need a C drive, a D drive, and you want a native block performance, this gets pretty close to that. If you're just needing something simple, file server type of experience, we have EFS for the NFS side, and we have FSX for Windows for the SMB side. So depending on your performance needs and depending on how much money you want to spend, because EBS is the most most expensive of our storage types, then you can make it determine, do I need simple file storage or do I really need block?
Got it. Okay.
Okay, any other questions on storage before I continue? Okay, I'll keep going. All right, so I think this may be one of my last sections. Oh, I'm lying. Let me go back and start with observability. So something that is important to application developers and may be overlooked is that, hey, I have the need to figure out what's happening in my application. And I may not necessarily be able to rely on default metrics coming out of just my CPU and my memory reports or my storage reports. How am I going to also report on metrics for my application itself? And this goes into the whole detect, investigate, remediate what's happening in my environment. So some steps that we've taken in this area is by releasing the AWS Distro for OpenTelemetry. Now, if you're not familiar with OpenTelemetry, this is a movement in the observability space where you can write your metrics, write your debug messages in a single format, and then have it be available, have it translated into formats that are compatible with various third-party reporting tools, including CloudWatch within AWS. So the whole point is to have a vendor-agnostic approach to reporting what's going on in your application.
Is this like in lieu of CloudWatch or in tandem? I mean, would you still use Kinesis to ship these logs to Help Stack, or how does this work better for Splunk and Help?
Sure. So it kind of goes hand in hand with what you mentioned, right? There's a variety of reporting targets. There's Splunk, there's Kinesis, there's CloudWatch. And each of them may have their own standard of how am I supposed to structure my JSON in order to get my data reported on properly as I'm writing to my logs, as I'm writing out my metrics. With OpenTelemetry, it's meant to be like a translation layer, for lack of a better term. So you just use the OpenTelemetry standard for writing out your metrics, for writing out your log messages, and then you'll have a collector that is able to translate it to CloudWatch, translate it to Splunk, translate it to what other formats on your behalf. So you, as the application developer, you don't have to worry about which monitoring service of the day is my company using. Are they going to pull the rug out from me and all of a sudden I have to support New Relic? Those kinds of things. OpenTelemetry is supposed to abstract all of that away for you.
Cool.
Yeah, and we've hired a couple people who are big in that space, so looking forward to more innovation there.
So you basically, like with any logging, you just add another sync in there, and it ships it, translates it, and then ships it to the endpoint that you want to go to, and you don't have to do as much wiring up with the CloudWatch to Kinesis to Elk anymore, I guess, or I don't know how it actually would flow.
Yeah, I mean, you could still do it that way if you want, but it's pretty cool that the CloudWatch agent now has a module for OpenTelemetry within it now. So within your application code, you can just use the OpenTelemetry format, and the CloudWatch agent will pick that up and then do the translation for you.
Oh, okay. What would the pipeline look like with Splunk? I mean, do you still want to have it go from CloudWatch to Splunk, or would it go from some collector here directly or something? I don't know, go to both places.
Okay, so I'm going to give you the prototypical consultant answer. It depends. So if your company is cool with having a whole bunch of OpenTelemetry translators within your server, I suppose you could have a collector that's good for CloudWatch, a collector that's good for Splunk, or you can have the collector for CloudWatch and then have it go through the traditional pipelines of put it into Kinesis out to Splunk if you would like to do that. Right. But the emphasis is less on the operations on the server, but for the application developers themselves, that they only have to care about writing into one format, let the machinery and the plumbing on the AWS side take care of all the translations to the various tools.
I got you. So it's all about a standard for within a logging within all your apps across the board. Got it. Okay.
Correct. And for those of us in the container space, we all know and love the struggle of running Prometheus, making sure that it's highly available and managed within our Kubernetes cluster. Well, we heard from customers that there must be a better way. So we have the managed service for Prometheus that is now available. And so customers can take advantage of that instead of having to manage Prometheus themselves within their container clusters.
Isn't Prometheus like another Fluentd, like a thing that is another way to get stuff like Kinesis to Elk? I mean, that's Prometheus is another type of monitoring stuff, right?
Yeah, so Fluentd is more on the log shipping side, whereas Prometheus is more metrics. So like,
what is my pod more for EKS, right? Like Prometheus and Fluentd would be more used for an EKS cluster, right? And like you said, one is for metrics, for counters and things like that going off the OS or the EKS cluster, and then the other stuff is more for like application logs, right?
Yeah, so Prometheus can actually be used with ECS as well. So that'll be one benefit of the managed service. Like no matter what container platform you're using, most likely you'll be able to use it with the managed service for Prometheus.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then hand in hand with the managed service for Prometheus, we also have the managed service for Grafana. Anytime you mention Prometheus, you must also contractually say Grafana. I'm just kidding. But normally you don't hear about one without the other because Grafana is the visualization layer for Prometheus. Prometheus is just collecting a whole bunch of metrics. Grafana is how you can kind of make sense out of it with graphs and charts and all of the things that wow the people looking at the reports. Okay, any questions on that? Okay, I'll keep going. Okay, so a big thing with Florida customers, we have huge call centers down here. So one of the things that AWS is doing is continuing to innovate in the call center space. So that starts with Amazon Connect. It's 100% cloud-based, and we hope that customers enjoy that experience. Now with Connect, we kept getting feedback from customers like, hey, wouldn't it be great if I could recognize a caller and kind of try and get to them something that's more in context for what they need and try to figure that out in advance? Well, we took that feedback and started innovating on our service. So the first one is the Connect Voice ID. So to make a signature of a caller, instead of having to go through the whole verify your social security number, verify your date of birth. I mean, I don't know who among us loves to give all of our personal bits to someone that we have no idea who they are over the phone. I don't like it. Maybe you do like giving away your information. I do not. But with Connect Voice ID, maybe we can get to the point of using a voice imprint. And with that, or asking specific questions, you can get to verifying who a customer is instead of going through the whole inquisition before you can actually get what you need done on the phone call. So that's in preview, and it'll be interesting to see the uptake on that. Along with that is the ability to build customer profiles. So based on contact history, phone numbers, recent orders, you're able to put together a profile of what the caller may be interested in. So if you are the 1-800 number to ask about orders, if someone recently made an order, maybe they have a problem with it, all that comes up into context as they're calling into the Connect system. And so that's a way of making your operators that much more efficient. Another feature is called Wisdom. So this is a way for Connect users to get in-context help based on what is happening during the call. So on the context of the call, there's some machine learning powered search that's going on in the background. And based on keywords, based on what is said, then maybe some wikis or links that are containing information that might be helpful to your operator are automatically being populated on the side of the screen so that you can make the call go to completion, hopefully in a quicker way with better customer appreciation and impression of the experience. And so something that our customers have been asking for with Connect is, hey, help us identify when a call might be going off the rails. And this is where Connect can listen for keywords such as unacceptable, cancel, the tone of voice, things like that, and then maybe allow supervisors to understand what is going on before they get on the call. And then they have to go through and start asking questions and figure out what was happening along the way and have the context ready for them. So this real-time contact lens, really powerful technology to help smooth over customer interactions, hopefully. And then finally, tasks. How many of you have dealt with call centers? They've promised you X and Y and Z is about to happen as a function of this call, and then whatever happens, you end up getting an unexpected bill because someone hasn't taken care of what they promised to take care of. Well, with Connect Tasks, you have the ability to define workflows for your callers, for your operators, I should say, as follow-up tasks to take care of after a call. So this is hopefully going to lead to better customer retention, better customer sentiment analysis, or sentiment about your service. Any questions on Connect? Anybody working in call centers or working with call centers that this might be useful for? All right, I'll keep going. And I think this might be the last section. Yes, it is. And this is about management and governance. This is going to be kind of like a random hodgepodge of different services that didn't have a better category. So I put them together here. And the first one is Audit Manager. So we have this service called Security Hub. It allows you to take a look at your config rules and other metrics in your account just to see where you stack up against PCI compliance and CIS benchmarks. Well, Audit Manager takes it a step further. And not only is it looking at PCI or CIS, you can look at things like FedRAMP or HIPAA, and it will take a look at your Security Hub reports. It'll take a look at your config rules and those reports, as well as other inputs. And for companies who are preparing to be audited for various compliance standards, this is an invaluable tool because it will take a look at those metrics, it'll take a look at those reports, and it can actually generate a list of the attestations that you are matching up with for that particular standard. So just one more tool in your arsenal to be prepared for an audit for these various standards. And then something that is exciting for management purposes is Cloud Shell. So the ability to have command line access to AWS resources right within the browser. And so, yes, this may look similar to offerings on other clouds, but we got enough feedback from customers that said, hey, we really want to have this. We don't want to have to go through making sure we have the right version of the AWS CLI and things like that before we can even start using the tools with our development environments. We just want to be productive right away. So this Cloud Shell is a dynamic environment that you can spin up. It has some limited storage where you can have some files that persist, but it will look just like a regular terminal session, but within the web browser in the AWS console.
Where does that differ from the browser-based CLI console that's been there already?
So are you talking about that connect button you can click for the EC2 instance and SSH
yeah, you could
into it right
literally
there?
deploy something that way and work from there if you wanted. I mean, obviously you got to have some S3 storage if you need something connected or something like that, but
yeah, so the connect functionality that's within the browser, well, before Cloud Shell, you are connecting directly to an EC2 instance. With Cloud Shell, this is just a temporary CLI environment that you can run CLI commands against. So you can administer resources. You're not just logged into a specific EC2 instance. And you may also be thinking of Cloud9, which is our web IDE. But that's a full-fledged, I'm able to click on files, open them with a GUI experience. It's a little bit slower to get started, but with Cloud Shell, it's way quicker. It's very simple. It's just a CLI. I can run commands. I don't have to wait for Cloud9 to provision. I don't have to connect directly to an EC2 instance. A very quick up and getting started experience with Cloud Shell. Yeah, I think it's pretty cool. I've tried it out a couple times, really convenient. And with DevOps Guru, this is taking a look at your deployed infrastructure. So let's say you have a Lambda-based application that's running. You turn on DevOps Guru, and it has a machine learning based engine that is taking a look at your resources. So you can point to that specific resources, or you can have a look at all resources. And let's say your Lambda invocations are getting a higher number of 500 errors or something like that being returned from their invocations. That's something where maybe you didn't think to make a CloudWatch metric an alarm out of. That's something that DevOps Guru can take a look at and look for aberrant behavior that you hadn't considered, and it can notify you about that. So helping you maybe take a more proactive approach rather than waiting for your customers to be hopping up and down mad that your application isn't running properly. Hopefully customers get some benefit out of that with DevOps Guru.
Can I just state that I hate the marketing monitor? I'm not sure I understand DevOps as opposed to performance guru or anything like that. It's interesting they chose the term DevOps there.
I think it's DevOps just because looking at the operations aspect of it, it's kind of like DevOps has morphed into being all things operations, whether it's for better or for worse, but that's the approach they're taking, since that seems to be the term that folks are agreeing is the proper way to term operations. But I hear your sentiment.
Yeah, I mean, definitely it's a popular catchword, that's for sure.
It kind of makes me feel like they're going to come back with some sort of tweaks for you to make to your CloudFormation template or something like that. That's what made me think at first.
Yeah, so the point is that this tool is probably going to be used for the DevOps type persona in the company. So not only is it going to alert, but it can also make suggestions. So yeah, the whole point of this is to maybe give you like almost a safety net. By all means, think of your failure scenarios, think of what you should be reporting on, but there just may be something that you happen to forget. And this is a way of maybe catching some things before they become too much of a big issue.
This is a way to lay off some staff is what it sounds like. Hey, Johnny, instead of you monitoring our apps, we're going to let this new guru do that for us.
No, we still need the staff there because someone's got to make the changes. They're not making automated changes in production. I can tell you that much.
Yeah, that's version 2, auto remediation.
Yeah, I don't think we'll be getting into that anytime soon, but time will tell. And last but not least, we've come down to our journey together with this recap, and hopefully I didn't do too badly, but I saved the best for last. How many of you are familiar with Chaos Monkey from Netflix? Well, this is a similar concept to fault injection simulator. So being able to have a managed service for chaos engineering for your workloads, it's pretty cool. Like one example I've seen is that you can say, okay, turn off these instances. You can say either specific instances to turn off, or you can give it a percentage of your instances to turn off. And this will be a way of testing how resilient your application is. And I was curious because before we announced that, I had looked at the Chaos Monkey repo on GitHub recently, and I saw it hadn't been updated in, I think, a year or so. And so I figured with the popularity of Chaos Monkey, chaos engineering, I was very confused as to why that repo was so old. And I guess someone knew that Fault Injection Simulator was going to be announced and that those projects were abandoned. But yes, this is a way of having chaos engineering with a probably better safety training wheels on, and so that you can have a smoother experience with chaos engineering if that's even possible. But yeah, it's available for you to try out.
That's very exciting. Very cool.
Yeah, and that brings me to the end. And so thank you everyone for your time. If there's any questions you've thought of as I was talking from different angles or different items, please feel free to ask them now.
Or forever hold your peace.
Real good job. A really good job. I really appreciate it.
There was a lot of useful stuff here.
And as useful as this stuff is, there's so much more. I looked at the full list of announcements. Like there is a slide deck that someone put together of all the announcements, and it was like over 150 slides. And I said, there's no way I'm presenting that. I just took a fraction of that and brought it to you guys.
I think that was a good selection of stuff too. I mean, some S3 strong consistency, that's really cool. So I think you did a great job plucking out some relevant stuff. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm glad it wasn't boring.
I've got a question, Trevor. Look into your crystal ball and tell me, when will Macie actually interrogate database content as opposed to just S3 in terms of looking for, you know, privileged information, data of significance from a security perspective? Is that even on the roadmap for Macie to be able to interrogate, let's say, relational databases and help spot sensitive data?
I honestly don't know. I haven't had customers ask for Macie to do that specifically, but it makes sense that folks will want that. Like there's so many offerings in the market about obscuring data in databases already. I'm not sure we'll do a better job. I mean, we could always maybe do a better job, but I'm not sure if customers want it, because they'll typically go to the Delphixes of the world and all the other solutions like that. But yeah, your guess is as good as mine. For now, S3 buckets seem to be the Achilles heel for some organizations. They forget to, you know, make sure that you don't make it permissive, keep it at the defaults. I wish people would just leave the defaults alone. But unfortunately, we had to develop Macy to help prevent customers from getting into trouble with that.
Yeah, in the use case I see, we just have customers who, let's say, need to be PCI compliant. We say, where are all your data stores where you have sensitive data? And they're like, well, we're not really sure, you know.
Right.
We're like, well, yeah, well, we're
Right.
not going to be able to find you a native tool to help you with that. You're going to have to do, you know, go outside.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
you all are a partner, so, you know, make sure you bring that up with your partner SA and your partner development manager. Make sure they get that feedback in.
Yep, we'll do. All right, well, great presentation and appreciate that, and hope we'll see you again on some future meetup.
Yeah, sounds like fun. I'll sit back and see what else is happening for the rest of the evening, unless that's it.
Unless anyone has some remaining questions. If not, everyone have a great night, and thanks so much for giving us your time.
Cheers, guys. Thanks so much for coming. Cheers, Trevor.
Cheers, Joe. Thanks, Trevor. Thanks so much.
Great pre-show.
Thank you. Bye.
Cheers, guys.
Take care all.